Hello students, welcome back in the part 3 of the lesson Enemy. Sadao spoke to the injured man. He said that the bullet had just missed his kidney. When Sadao would get engrossed in the operation, he would start talking to the patient. He addressed that the patient as his friend, is my friend. He called the injured man also my friend. He forgot that this man was not a friend but an enemy. Sadao was quick. He made a few surgical cuts on the body and removed the bullet. The man trembled in pain but remained unconscious. He spoke a few words in English, which were an expression of the pain that he was experiencing. The injured man choked and said, "Guts. They got my guts." He meant that he was brave and courageous, and the Japanese army would have a tough time while punishing him. Upon hearing him, Hana cried out to Sadao. Sadao hushed her to keep quiet. The man became so quiet that the Sadao held his wrist to check his heartbeat. He was checking if the man was still alive. His pulse was there, although it was very weak. Sadao thought that it was enough for a person who had a desire to live. There was still hope that the man would survive. Sadao was sure that he did not want the man to live. Sadao stopped Hana from administering anesthetic. He turned quickly and chose a small bottle from the medicines. He filled a syringe, you can see the picture of the syringe here, with a medicine and pushed the vaccine into the man's left arm. Sadao placed the needle down and held the man's wrist. The pulse shivered once or twice and then improved. Sadao took a deep breath as he told Hana that the injured man would live. He woke up. His blue-colored eyes were full of fright as he realized where he was. Hana felt sorry for him. She served him food as the servants refused to enter the room while he was kept. When Hana met the injured man for the first time, she saw that the man was gathering strength and he was full of fear. Hana said softly to the injured man that he should not be afraid. He was astonished that she could speak English. Hana replied that she had lived in America for a long time. The man wanted to speak further but was not able to speak. Hana fed him gently with a spoon made of porcelain. The man did not want to eat, but still he ate. As Hana fed the man, she said, soon he would become strong. She said, so despite the fact that she disliked him, the man did not reply to her. Sadao visited the man on the third day after the operation. The young boy was sitting, but his face was pale and weak due to the effort that he made while sitting. Sadao screamed at him and ordered him to lie down. He said that the man would die if he stressed himself. Sadao forced him down and inspected the wound that he had operated upon. He scolded the man that he could die if he tried to exert himself. The boy asked Sadao that what he would do with him now. It seemed that the boy was hardly 17 years old. He asked Sadao that would he hand over to the Japanese army? Sadao did not reply instantly. He completed examining the boy and then put silk quilt on him. Sadao said that he himself did not know that he would do what he should do with the boy. He added that he was supposed to hand him over to the police. He also disclosed that he knew that the boy was a prisoner of war. As Sadao saw the boy was about to speak, he raised his hand to indicate him to do so. Sadao asked him not to speak, not to tell his name, also unless he asked him to do so. Sadao and the boy exchanged glances, and then boy closed his eyes and turned his face towards the wall. He said okay in a low voice, as he felt bitter by Sadao's word. He said okay, and then outside the door, Hana was waiting for Sadao. He saw that she was in some sort of trouble. Hana said to Sadao that Yumi told her that the servants would not stay with them if the American man lived there any longer. She also said that Sadao and Hana had been in America for such a long time that they had forgotten their country's priority. Yumi and the servants thought that Hana and Sadao liked Americans. Sadao reacted harshly and said that this was not true. He said that Americans were their enemies. He had been trained in such a way that he could not let a man die and would help to save him in whichever way he could. That was what Sadao had done. Hana said that the servants could not understand Sadao's predicament. Sadao agreed with us. Both of them had nothing more to say. The chores of the house continued, but the servants were vigilant. They were polite but unfriendly towards their masters. They were polite but unfriendly towards their masters. One morning, the old gardener said that it was obvious what their master should have done. The old gardener had worked with flowers all his life and specialized in moss. Now, moss is a very small, soft green plant. He had been employed by Sadao's father. The gardener had made one of the best moss gardens in Japan for Sadao's father. He would sweep the bright green colored carpet of the moss clean so that the sharp leaves of pine tree could not spoil the soft velvety surface. He plucked a flower bud from the bush as he said that his master's son, that is Sadao, knew very well what he was supposed to do. He added that when a man was almost dead, he should have left him to bleed to death. The cook said disrespectfully that their master was so proud of his skill at saving lives that it did not bother whose life he was saving. She cut the neck of a hen skillfully and held the bird as it shivered. She let the blood of the hen flow into the wisteria plant. The old gardener had instructed her that blood was the best fertilizer for the plants, and he did not allow her to waste a single drop of it. Yumi was worried about the fate of Sadao and Hana's children. She wondered that when they grew up, they would be labeled as children of a traitor. As Sadao, traitor is a person who betrays his country. As Sadao was helping an American, all the people of Japan would consider him to be an enemy of Japan, a traitor of his country. As Hana stood in the veranda arranging the flowers, the servants discussed the matter in her presence, as they wanted her to know their views about the matter. Hana also felt that the servants were right, but she had some feelings for the injured man which she could also not analyze. She did not like the prisoner, neither was she attached towards him. The day before, the injured man told her that in his name was Tom. Hannah did not like him at that moment also. She had reacted by bowing her head mildly. She saw that her reaction hurt the injured man, but she did not want to reduce this hurt as that she had caused to him, because the injured man was a great trouble to her. His presence was a threat to Hannah and Sadaf. Sadaf was performing his role perfectly. He would examine the wound every day. One morning, the last stitches were removed from the injured man's body, and he would be as well as ever in the next 15 days. In the meantime, Sadaf went to his office and wrote a letter to the chief of the police to report the entire matter to him. Sadaf started his report as he wrote that on the 21st of February, an escaped prisoner was washed up on the shore in front of his house. Sadaf has just typed this much of the report. He opened the drawer of his desk and kept this unfinished report in it. On the seventh day after that two things happened, the servants of the house left in the morning. They had tied their belongings in huge piece of cloth. When Hannah got up in the morning, she saw that the work has not been done. The house was dirty, the food was not prepared. She realized that the servants were up to something. She was shocked and horrified when she came to know that the servants were leaving. And they were very old servants. Yumi, they had been employed by Sadaf's father, the servants, and had served Sadaf since his childhood. Yumi was crying because she would miss the children. She was so sad that she ran up to Hannah after she had left. Yumi said to Hannah that if the baby missed her at night, she could call her. She further added that she was going to her own house and Hannah knew where the house was. Hannah smiled and thanked her for the offer, but to herself she said that in case the baby cried, she would not call for Yumi. The next morning, Hannah prepared the breakfast and Sadaf helped her by looking after the children. Neither of them talked regarding the servants, but after Hannah served the morning food to the prisoner of war, she came back to Sadaf, probably to talk something. Hannah was very worried and she questioned that why they were not very clear about what they ought to do. She added that even their servants were very clear as compared to them. She said that why were they behaving differently from other Japanese people? Hannah wanted to say that as Americans were their enemies, they should not have treated the prisoner of war and they should have left him die, just like any other Japanese would have done. Sadaf did not reply to Hannah, but after some time he went into the room where the prisoner of war was resting and spoke very fast. He said that the day the man could get up and stand on his feet, Sadaf wanted him to stand only 5 minutes at a time. Further, he added that the next day he could try to stand for double the time, that is 10 minutes. Sadaf also said that it would be good for everyone that the man regain strength as soon as possible. Sadaf hinted that they wanted to get rid of the American as early because he had become a cause of trouble for them. Sadaf saw that his words brought a hint of terror and scare on the face of the young boy. His face was still very pale and colorless because he was very weak. Sadaf was very expressionless when he said that the boy did not need to thank him. The boy thanked him, but Sadaf, in a very expressionless way, he said, "No need to thank me." As he spoke this, he saw that the hint of scare again appeared in boy's eyes. The writer compares the boy's terrorized eyes to that of a scared animal. The injury marks on the neck of the boy turned the bright red in color for a while. Siddharth thought that what has caused those injury marks, but he did not ask the boy about them. That day, a second incident happened. Now let's see what was that second incident. Hannah was busy with the household work as the servants had left. All of a sudden, she had to perform all the work which she was not used to. She was very tired. She saw that a messenger wearing official uniform had come to the house. As she saw him, her hands went weak and she was unable to breathe. This was because she felt that the servants must have told the authorities that they were sheltering an enemy. Hannah ran up to Sadao, and as she was struggling to breathe, she was unable to speak. She was panting. By that time, the messenger also followed her through the garden and he stood in front of Sadao. Hannah was helpless and she pointed a finger towards the messenger. Sadao was reading a book. When he saw Hannah, he looked up. He was sitting in his office, which had a partition in it. The part of the office beyond the partition opened and the garden was full of shady sunshine. Sadao asked the messenger the matter due to which he had visited them. When he saw that the messenger was wearing a uniform, he stood up as a mark of respect. The messenger said that Sadao was supposed to accompany him to the palace. He added that the old general was suffering in pain and Sadao was supposed to visit him and treat him as a doctor. Upon hearing this, Hannah was relieved and she said, "Oh." With this, she took a deep breath and asked, was that all for which the messenger had come? The messenger reacted and said, "All." He could not understand what else could it be for which he was supposed to visit the house. As Sadao had to accompany the messenger, he went to Hannah to say goodbye. Hannah said to Sadao that she had thought that the messenger had come to arrest him. Sadao looked carefully at Hannah's anxious eyes. He was very sad and distressed, and he said that he must get rid of the man for the sake. He decided that he had to get rid of the man by any means. Sadao went along with the messenger to visit the general. Sadao narrated the entire story to the general. The general, who was very weak, said that he understood Sadao's position because he had also studied in America at the Princeton University. But there were only a few Japanese who had studied in America. Sadao replied to the general that he did not care for American man, but as he had operated upon him successfully. The general interrupted him and said, Yes. He felt that Sadao was a necessary part of his life. As Sadao had been successful at operating on the man, the general felt that Sadao was very skilled. The general asked that did Sadao think that the general had any chance of surviving another heart attack as one he had that day? Sadao replied that in his opinion the general could not survive more than one such heart attack. The general said that then in that case he could not allow anything to happen to Sadao. He wanted to say that he needed Sadao and so he could protect him. The general's long, weak, yellowish face became expressionless because he was thinking about Sadao being arrested. He became serious, closed his eyes at the thought of Sadao being arrested and said that Sadao could not be arrested. Further, he added that if Sadao was sentenced to death, and he needed an operation the next day, then who would operate upon him? So the general wanted to say that he needed Sadao, and so he would protect him and he would not let anything happen to him. Sadao suggested to the general that there were many other surgeons in Japan. The general replied that he did not trust anyone else other than Sadao. He added that the best surgeons had been trained by the Germans, and for them the operation would be successful even if the general died. He did not care for their point of view. The general added that the Japanese could not combine the harsh nature of the Germans with the emotional nature of the Americans. So, the general wanted to say that they did not have such persons who could combine the harsh nature of a German, the emotional nature of an American. He said that if they would have been able to do, then Sadao could be harsh and could turn the prisoner to the Japanese and he laughed. The writer says that the general had a strange sense of humor. He was very witty. Then he asked Sadao that being Japanese, could he not combine these two foreign elements? So the foreign elements to which the general is referring is the harsh nature of the German and the emotional nature of an American. Sadao smiled at the general's question and said that he was not quite sure about it, but for his betterment, he was willing to try it out. Thank you so much. Hope you have understood till here.